Ooh, all right. This is going to be interesting. So, Dark and Darker, a creation of Iron Mace Games, a new Korean dev company, has been taken off of Steam. And the reason it's been taken off is a former company of the lead creator is suing them, saying that they stole assets to create their new game. Now, this is a big controversy because the game was taken off of Steam. It's gone. And all assets on Steam are removed. This is a pretty big deal. So, for those of us that were big fans of Dark and Darker, we played those play tests. A lot of us are probably playing Diablo 4 this weekend, and some news came through that it was taken down. I was one of those. I was pretty surprised. I'm a little shocked. I didn't think it was going to go this far. I really hope it does not impact the game itself. Here's what I'm worried and predicting this. This is a new type of video for me, doing a reaction to reading, to essentially reading what the claims are and reading the defense from Iron Mace. Let me know if you like this video style. I might do some more in the future, and I'll definitely follow up on whatever we learn here. But ultimately, it sounds like it's going to be pretty serious, because if it is true, a couple of things could happen. Number one, Iron Mace could just go under. I don't think that'll happen, but it really depends on the strength of the litigation. And if that doesn't happen, what for sure would happen if this was proven true is there'd be obviously a fine, some penalties, and it might mean that Dark and Darker needs to get completely recreated from the ground up. I'm not sure that they would scrap the project entirely, because it's such a good game and it's got so much fanfare. But we'll see. Let's hop right into this. I've got it open in my screen, so I'm just gonna pop over. Okay, and I'll start reading this. Let me move my. There we go. Move myself up here, so it's easier to read. Okay, let's just kick this right off. So it looks like this is a takedown notice. Now, I haven't read this yet, so this is all going to be pretty raw. We're Iron Mace, a South Korean independent video game developer known for developing Dark and Darker. This letter is intended to address serious allegations of copyright infringement, okay, and misappropriation of trade secrets. That's an interesting one. Misappropriation of trade secrets. Now, this is a Korean lawsuit, so it's not American. So I would assume that this means I don't know. That this means it's like they learn the process, they learn how to build a game through this company. But if it's industry standard stuff, you know, it's a trade secret. Even if it's industry standard and it's secret industry standard, there's plenty of that out there. That might not stand up in an American court, but it might stand up in Korean. I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out. Let's keep reading. That have been levied against us in the recent DMCA takedown notice from Nexon. Okay, another Korean company. Nexon states that, according to their investigation, Dark and Darker appears to have been built and developed using trade secrets and copyrighted information copied and stolen from Nexon. They're going to have to prove that one. We would like to show that these allegations are baseless. No copyright materials or misappropriated trade secrets from Nexon were used by Iron Mace. Fair enough. In the takedown notice, Nexon lists their registered copyrights pertaining to P3 Project. I'm assuming that's the game they're talking about, which were registered just last month, more than 6 months after Dark and Darker was revealed to the public as the subject of the alleged infringement. Yeah, that timeline doesn't really make a ton of sense, but here's what I will say. Some copywriting takes years to go through, so it's absolutely possible they filed this 2 years ago and it just now came through. But here's the other thing I'll say. Yeah, this might be public knowledge, but did you get a copyright? Big question. And man, that sucks. I hope they're not copywriting the genre, right? Or the game type, like an extraction dungeon crawler. Like, you can't just own that, right? People can make that game again. The first point of contention appears where they accuse one of our members of acquiring and transferring key assets to his personal server without authorization. That's a huge issue. Like, yeah, that will fuck Iron Mace, if that's true. Resulting in unlawful transfer. Here is our response to this claim. Now, I don't know how it works in Korean law. You do this in U.S. law? Ooh, yeah. I mean, you can do jail time. You're looking at millions of dollars in fines. That would 100% possibly scrap Dark and Darker, and they might have to literally build the game from scratch again. And they may even need to rebrand. I'm not sure. That's a huge issue. Okay, due to a mandatory remote work policy implemented by Nexon in response to COVID-19 pandemic, the accuser member received multiple written authorizations from executive members at Nexon from 2020 to 2021, allowing them to utilize an external personal server to improve performance of his team. This is actually something that happened all over the industry and a lot worldwide. A lot of us were going into remote work. Many teams weren't set up to do remote. I had worked for years in remote before then, so I was actually really well set up. I already had this office kind of built. The problem is, though, like a lot of my team members didn't. A lot of the people I worked with didn't. They just were used to working on site. So I can absolutely see that this is a pretty good argument here. So he spun up his personal server probably to help transfer files. Because the company may not have had that set up yet. And if he had that written authorization, he should be good with that as long as it went through the proper checks, security teams are aware, stuff like that. It shouldn't be a big deal. We'll see. After utilizing the personal servers for almost a year, that's a long time. The accused member asked the leadership if it was okay to continue using his personal servers. The leadership told him to refrain from using the personal servers. Totally fair. That's exactly what they should do, right? Use company assets. The accused member agreed to take down the servers as long as he could maintain the performance of his team by having his programming team come to the office, bypassing the company-wide remote work policy. You don't really get to make an ultimatum in that sense, right? Like if they ask you to take it down, you have to take it down. That's just the reality. Put that on company assets. And if company assets aren't there, prioritize getting them spun up, or the reality is you might just lose that productivity because of a business decision. The business decision might suck, but the reality is, we all have leaders and managers and people we work for. We didn't agree with their direction. You make a change to leave if it's that big of a deal, but you don't really get to play with their assets. It's theirs. So I'm just going to preface that. Not sure what's going to come. The accused member initiated the takedown of the personal servers. Damn, right there. Bam. Good job. Exactly what we should have done. But due to uncertainty of sporadic COVID waves, taking down the server in a quick and exhaustive manner was not a high priority. What? Okay, so they initiated the takedown, but they didn't take it down, is what that reads. As a result, some automated scripts related to the build machine were left running on his personal server at this time. That's going to get you. They got you right there. You just admitted to running company assets on your personal server after you were asked to take it down. Damn it, Iron Mace. Okay, when the building next to his office were shut down due to confirmed COVID cases, he took a risk and fully set up his personal servers in aid in development. Okay, I think that's talking about when he initially did it, right? This isn't new. So, it's a weird way that they put that in the time frame. Since all company machines were monitored using a company-wide endpoint solution, totally standard, the existence of and usage of his personal servers, ones that were subject to approvals and reapprovals before, must be reasonably known to Nexon over this multi-month period of development. So you're kind of blurring this here. I don't know what portion of the development you're talking about. Are you talking about after you were told to take it down, or are you talking about during COVID? This is not clear at all. And you admitted to running it without their permission. You're fucked at that point, 100%. I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine put together before Napster. Sorry, not before Napster. Before, what was the other one? Oh, Pandora, before Spotify, those like music, like streaming services with radio. He had the idea of creating something similar with a profile. And it was his passion project. He built this whole thing out. He built a framework for it on his work PC, pitched it to his boss, his boss didn't, his boss then took the idea, pitched it to leadership. Their leadership didn't go with it. The boss decided to spin up a separate company under the same umbrella of that company, right? And a new division, and built this project out. It finally got approval, and my friend wanted a part of it. They cut him out completely. He wanted to get profit sharing, stuff like that. They basically said no because ultimately, unfortunately for him, he created all the assets and everything on their machines, their property, and he couldn't utilize that to do it on his own. He was really, burnt by this whole thing. He left the company, yada, yada, yada. Ultimately, this is kind of the same thing, but the reverse. You built company assets on your personal stuff, and then you took company assets and put it on your personal stuff. That's cut and dry, unfortunately. Like, that really sucks that you continued, whatever the dev's name is. Dude, you should not have done that. You should have literally just moved those scripts over to company assets. It doesn't make any sense that you didn't just pause things for a few days, right? You might have to work the weekend to get it done. Sometimes we have to do that in life. Shit. All right. Anyway, sorry. Rant over. But that's it. It sucks. You do things like that, and the company's going to win 100% of the time. Not a single warning was received from a security team. That doesn't really matter. So it was easy to construe it as acknowledgement that his actions were acceptable. No, it's not. No, it's not. Man, that sucks. Otherwise, it would mean that Nexon would be failing at taking responsible measures to maintain the confidentiality of their assets. No, you went against their confidentiality of their assets. Literally. Okay. The accused member decided to leave Nexon in June 2021. Okay, yeah, whatever. I see. Yep. Didn't like the atmosphere. Hey, I've done the same thing. I have not liked the leadership of a company, didn't like the direction they were going in. Things blew my mind when they made decisions. I left the company. Totally normal. This is a good thing that he did. It wasn't a right fit for him. Maybe the culture was off. He didn't like leadership, whatever that was. He decided to go in a different direction. That's totally normal. Having worked closely with the development team, he informed them of his plans to leave Nexon. He made it clear that the reason for leaving was due to uncertain atmosphere fostered at the company. He also stated that he'd welcome the team's talents for his next endeavor. This is also normal. I have left multiple companies taking an entire team with me. I've been poached. I've had people on my team poached. It's totally part of business, and it's a good thing for those people if they're going to a new culture that's better for them, a better job, more money, more stability, whatever it is. That's a fantastic thing, and I applaud it every time. He made it clear that he'd likely pursue a project in the same genre as the P3 project. Okay, so I see there's going to be some tension here, very clearly. But explicitly clarified that any development would be made completely from scratch. That's probably a good thing to say, whether or not it's true. This fact has been noted in witness testimony collected by the police investigating a separate personal lawsuit filed against the accused member by Nexon. So there is other shit going on here. Okay, good to know. This is deeper. If there's a personal lawsuit, that means there's some butthurt tendencies here. or he did steal some shit. Or it's nothing. I have no idea. Shortly after Nexon's leadership became aware of the accused members' plans to leave the company, instead of trying to resolve it in a professional manner, they abruptly sent an internal audit team and accused him of stealing files, despite having observed his personal server being used without notice for several months. Okay, so it does sound like the leadership was aware he was using this, hadn't done anything, waited till he quit, or was talking about leaving, and then sent an internal audit team. Okay, which, to be completely honest with you, if you are putting company assets on your personal stuff, they are within full right, at least in America, in the United States, to do that. I don't know about Korea. I'd assume so in Korea. It would be dumb not to do that as a company, straight up. It would just be, could have credit card information on there. You know what I mean? For customers. Like, you never fucking know. Can't trust people. Due to harassment and the lack of respect from the company, and after consulting with his lawyers, he concluded that his private information on his private servers was not subject to record, so he deleted his information to ensure his privacy. So he was gonna get audited, and then he deleted everything. Hillary Clinton, sorry. What? Dude. Okay, that might have stood up for Hillary on her email server because of fucking politics. This is business shit. I don't know if you're going to get away with that in business, especially South Korea. Ooh, this is sketchy. It's sketchy. It does not seem like this guy is innocent. Just going to fucking call that out. I mean, they already admitted he's not in some of this, but you're wiping your server? Dude. He was fired on these unproven claims and subsequently sued by the company a month later. Yeah, I'd fucking imagine so. With liens placed on his home and other assets. Yeah, good. His personal lawsuit is still ongoing, and the claims of stealing or misappropriating these files have not been substantiated. He has been fully cooperative. That's awesome. Good. I'm glad you are. Investigated with the investigation from the police, and has been the target of multiple search warrants. Iron Mace has also been searched. Yeah, they're talking about it right now. And there's been no evidence of wrongdoing, at least yet. The fact that 9 of the 20-plus P3 project team members voluntarily left Nexon out of their own free will to join Iron Mace, despite the risks of joining a startup, shows that they trust the accused member. Yeah, but doesn't mean he didn't do anything wrong, right? It means he was probably a good leader. They liked the idea of this new project. Or the old leadership at Nexon, or the current leadership at Nexon, are a bunch of fucking douchebags. And they wanted to get out of a toxic environment. Or maybe they just didn't like the direction they were going in. There's a lot of reasons they might leave and then find this other project that's pretty close to the same work. Pretty easy to move over to, especially when you're getting poached or you have headhunters from the new company coming after you, which might just be literally the guy who started it. So that's, I don't know if that's going to stand up very well, but, you know, totally fair. They did like his leadership. It sounds like enough to at least go over there, so he's not doing everything wrong, whether or not he's a thief. As a secondary contention, the takedown notice submitted by Nexon then alleges that the founder of Iron Mace, Terrence Park, knew that the accused member used stolen trade secrets and copyrighted material. Wait. As a second, the takedown notice submitted by Nexon then alleges that the founder of Iron Mace, okay, so Terrence Park founded Iron Mace, who is not this dev, knew that the accused member used stolen trade secrets and copyrighted material to develop Dark and Darker to knowingly benefit oneself and Iron Mace, basing the claim purely on past association and without offering any proof. Yeah, they will have to prove that. They might very well be able to, especially if you deleted your fucking server, dude. Okay, the founder of the company has to acknowledge, or has no knowledge of any stolen trade secrets, yada, yada, yada. Okay, yeah, of course they're going to say that. Next up, okay, so the takedown notice then states that Nexon's P3 game has never been disclosed to a third party during this period in an attempt to strengthen their claims. The only way they could come up with a similar idea was to have stolen it. However, this claim can be clearly proven false. Nexon disclosed P3 in a media showcase in August 2021 to members of the gaming media. Okay, which is before Iron Mace was put together and started working on Dark and Darker, right? That follows that timeline well. Okay, that makes sense. The takedown notice then states that no other games had the same concept or genre and plot. Sure, yeah, when you announced it. As the P3 game, even though none of the contents of these categories are original, that is fucking fact. And other games like Expedition Agartha have all 3 that are similar. Oh, interesting. I'll have to look that game up. Yeah, cool. Just because, yeah, right, because it's an extraction game, totally normal. It's an action game, totally normal. And then, yeah, on top of that, what, you get a dungeon crawler with D&D vibes? Yeah, that's like, there's plenty of those games. Just because it may be difficult for a large bureaucrat. Okay, sorry, I skipped some. The notice then states that the mere 10 months of forming Iron Mace, Its demo test version of Dark and Darker became publicly available August 2022. So literally a year later. Okay, then notice that it's impossible from Iron Mace to have developed Dark and Darker in such a short time frame. I wouldn't say impossible, improbable, yeah. And they clearly got a bunch of experience working on the previous game, which would help speed them up. It's a smaller team. They might be a lot leaner. But it is a pretty fair argument that, hey, they wouldn't have been able to do this if they hadn't worked for us. Now, if Nexon didn't have an NDA, tough shit. You should have had an NDA. But it is a pretty good argument. They'll have to really prove the shit out of that, though. Unfortunately, they don't have a server to look at. Just because it may be difficult for a large bureaucratic company such as Nexon, blah, blah, yeah, to develop. Yeah, exactly what I was saying. Doesn't mean it's not possible. Firstly, Iron Mace started with a larger team at the beginning of development. Yeah, exactly. That's a good start. Secondly, the starting team composition was better set for quick development, okay, with a heavy focus on programming. Third, P3 project team did not have server programmer, while Iron Mace made sure. Yeah, that's just crazy, guys. Why wouldn't you have server architecture and server programming? If you're a dev company, you're not using Docker. I mean, you're not like GitHub. Like, there's so many productivity tools you could be putting to work here. It's fucking weird you didn't do that. To be honest with you, I mean, I get, trade secrets and shit, but, like, you went remote, right? So why don't you have this built? Which also definitely points out to why this guy spun up that server. It makes sense that he did it. Unfortunately, he went about it the wrong way. Fortunately, we have evidence we will be releasing soon that shows exactly how we built our game so quickly and efficiently. Good. I'll be honest with you, I do like the transparency that Iron Mace is going with here. And they're showing the entire community. Anybody can join this Discord. I'll drop a link in the comments. Firstly, rely on utilizing as many store-bought assets as possible. All right. Yep. Cut down the cost of time in game and development. That is exactly how you would do that. It's eliminating waste. It's a really good tool. We will soon release a list of store-bought assets that we use in the development of Dark and Darker to show how almost all 3D assets were purchased from the Unreal Marketplace. Pretty fucking solid argument. We'll also have numerous videos providing evidence of key milestone builds from our early internal playtests up until our most recent tests, showing our progress and to build the game and how they built it ground up as soon as we'll soon start to post online. Okay, that's fantastic. And here's what I'll say. The tests were fucking awesome. I had an absolute blast. I cannot wait for the next one. I hope there's a next one. Shit. For the more technically minded, we will also share logs, file lists from our Git version control repository. Awesome. GitHub right there. Tons of transparency. Anybody can go dive into that and check it out. From the very first push-up until we added our in-house anti-cheat implementation. Okay. That's cool. They built their own. So other developers can easily see the progression of our game and how unlikely it is to sneak stolen code assets. Well, you say that, but it's still absolutely easy to do. Since key member, but, showing the transparency definitely will mean that they'll be able to see it if you did it. Since key members of Iron Mace were also on the development team of P3 Project and know how quickly and haphazardly the P3 Project was built. Ooh, shots fired. If anything, using assets designed in code built for that project would have been a hindrance rather than a benefit to the development team of Dark and Darker. Ho, shit. That's an artillery fucking cannon. And, I've left so many teams and just had that same thought of like, oh man, that we, unfortunately the leadership just rushed that so much. There's so much waste. They're trying to be agile, right? That's the catchphrase. They want to work quickly, high priority stuff. But the reality is, like, you build problems into your framework when you do not do the diligence of going back and remaking it after you built it. Sure, do a very quick, MVP, minimal viable product that you can publish, but then go back if it's going to be permanent and improve it. You might even have to rewrite it from scratch, but at least it will be permanent framework you're going to use in the future, and it sounds like they did not do that here. They do not have Scrum. The notice then states that Nexon conducted a comparative analysis of Dark and Darker and the P3 game. They state that they found over 2K resources with identical file names between the two games, providing that the number of identical file names is too substantial for mere coincidence. Okay, here's what I'll say. Just because the file names are the same doesn't mean shit, dude. That's a naming convention, number one. And there are standards for naming conventions, right? So that's a fucking big deal. Now, what's in the file, if that's the same, that's an issue. Sure, absolutely. But you can't fucking do this copyright bullshit on a fucking file name. You're out of your mind. That will not stand up. Unless you have a judge and a hearing with people that just don't understand the basics of programming. They were kind enough to list all the identical file names after removing the ones that are similar due to the usage of the same engine, right? And appended it to Exhibit D to their takedown claim. Of the remaining 1,000 resources listed in Exhibit D, sorry, it's hard to read, with identical names, 950 are due to being identical store-bought assets and plugins for the Unreal Engine. That is, oh yeah, exactly right there. So you're both using the same marketplace. You're not purchasing it and then having the owner take it down, which means you're not buying exclusive rights. You're buying rights to it that anybody can use. That's on you, Nexon. That's not on them. The remaining 82 identical resource files, actually 41 resource files, because the file names are duplicates within variations of the extension names. Yeah, that's totally a normal, issue. They need to clean that up. Can be easily explained due to recommended file naming conventions. Yep, and general conceptual names that will be similar to typical first-person fantasy game. Yeah, that makes absolute sense to anybody who's ever fucking been in any kind of dev environment, project management, analytics, really like business in general. We would welcome and be happy to do a comparative analysis of the actual content of these identical file names through a third-party auditor. Fuck yeah, good call. If Nexon agrees to provide their files. Woo! Shots, more shots. The notice then states the similarities in the character design and other settings and structural designs of the two games. Our response is that both games rely on a very traditional classic fantasy tropes, none of which are original and can be found in numerous other fantasy games. Yep, including the listed character classes, absolutely. Torch mechanics, yep. Both games being in the same genre of a classic fantasy dungeon crawler. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. There was nothing in Dark and Darker that was, like, revolutionary to me. It was literally, oh, cool, first-person Dungeons & Dragons dungeon crawler style game that I get to extract from. That was it. I was like, fuck yeah, that's dope. The notice then states that even if, as Iron Mace argued in media statements, the graphic assets, blah, 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 were purchased from the Unreal Marketplace, it does not explain the numerous specific aspects of the character in Dark and Darker characters that are different from that of the graphic assets available for purchase in the Unreal Marketplace, but are identical to the aspects of the character found in P3 game. Here's our response to this claim. I'm not really exactly sure what they're saying. I think they're trying to say characteristics of the characters. But from what I can tell, the characters look like placeholders. Like, I'd assume they're going to have character creation. Maybe not. I don't know. For clarity, much of the 3D graphic assets were purchased from the Unreal Marketplace, but many 2D graphic elements, including character concepts, art, and UI, were created in-house. Makes sense. The character concept artworks are based on very traditional fantasy subject matter and tropes that explain their similarities. Okay. Furthermore, the character concept artwork for both games were created by the same individual, explaining the similarities in style. Okay. They might get you there. But that's also pretty fair. Like, the same artist creates it, it's going to look similar, but you should be able to make it differentiated enough that you wouldn't have to worry about this. So hopefully they did that. They may have to just kind of tweak this bit, which that's not the end of the world. That's probably pretty easy for them to do. We will soon link a separate document from our concept artist explaining the core differences in the artwork and why our artwork is not an infringement on the characters of the P3 game. The document will display other concepts found throughout Google search. Okay, makes sense. Here's another thing I'll say. Why haven't we seen the Nexon game? Maybe we have. I don't know. I haven't seen shit on it personally. I'm probably going to look into that after this. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video because I'd kind of like to understand, you know, where these arguments are coming from. The notice then states that the level of extent of the two games' key concepts, genre, and storyline make it clear that the Iron Mace must have used Nexon's trade secrets to create Dark and Darker. Come on. Yeah, yes and no. I don't know. There's arguments on both sides. I just don't really think that's going to stand up. Again, both the concepts and storyline are purposely traditional and generic. Yeah, and can be found in many fantasy games, including pen and paper RPGs, 100%, which was one of the main inspirations of Dark and Darker. Yeah, clearly Dungeons & Dragons, if you looked at any of the old artwork for Dungeons & Dragons, maybe you played it when you were in high school or still play it today, it's fucking right up that alley. Like, that's the nostalgia factor and one of the things that most of us love about the game. The premise of adventure, delving into dungeons full of monsters and treasures and their quest to seek riches, is so generic and common that it can be broadly applied to numerous other fantasy games. Just for fun, we asked ChatGPT to come up with a description for a generic PvP dungeon crawling game that created an eerily similar game description below. I love that they use ChatGPT. You know, it is definitely the fly word right now, the hot thing. It's so hot right now. But it is so fun to use. So in this PvP dungeon crawling game, I'm not going to read all this. You guys can check this out. But ultimately, oh man, they definitely got Iron Mace on the use of the server and the assets for Nexon, Nexon's assets. That sucks. And there's a few other places where it could probably be pushed that, dude, you probably used some secrets that you got from Nexon, but the reality is they didn't have an NDA, or else they would have called that out. And I don't know how the system in Korea works, but in the United States, they're gonna actually have to prove a lot of this stuff. And using the same assets, it sounds so much like you guys use the same marketplace and you didn't buy exclusive rights. Like, are you out of your mind, Nexon? This is what happens. And you possibly filed your copyright too late. Like, it's going to be very interesting to watch this play out. I think Iron Mace is going to be fine. I think the assets on the personal server, that's the personal lawsuit. That's kind of where that lands for me. It's going to be very difficult for them to show that Dark and Darker was built off that, especially if Iron Mace is publishing that in GitHub. It's going to be there for everybody to see, right? And they're publishing their list, like I see up here. They're very clearly publishing, their list of Exhibit D. I can't say exhibit today. Of the identical file names, so people can actually go in and look at them. And if if Nexon will publish their version too, easily can be compared. So I think Iron Mace is probably in a pretty good spot here. I'll continue to follow up on this. I'll make another video whenever more information comes out to kind of check on this, because I really want to play the next playtest. I really hope this doesn't fuck Iron Mace over or Dark and Darker. It'll probably slow it down, which really sucks, but it is what it is. Anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll definitely make some more of these. I actually had fun doing this. Leave a comment below if you've got any thoughts on this. Like, I'd love to know if anybody out there has got idea of how like Korean law works with this. If you've been through similar things like my buddy did, working on, company assets and stuff. And ultimately, I hope we can all play this game together. Well, thanks for joining me. I will see you next time.